On this episode, I make the hardest list I've ever made. My top 5 favorite films. I have just one thing to say to you all. Puppies!
Okay, I'm gonna try to steal the slipper from the ferocious beast. All right. No, he's got his paw on it. Oh no! Oh no! Ah! Okay, I'm all right. I'm okay. Just back away slowly. Slowly.
That is actually my sister's dog, Louie. He's about 3 months old now, and he's surprisingly good for being so young. He doesn't like jump in mud puddles or bark or anything. And I thought I'd just go ahead and show you all that in case you were having a bad day. But it doesn't really have anything to do with the subject at hand, which is movies. Now, I'm not going to deny this was a rather hard list to make. It really came down to 4 films. And all of those films were considered for the number 1 spot, but I finally had to settle on one. And I guess the best way for me to begin is by starting with one of my favorite films of all time, certainly one of the most heartfelt films, and that is The Artist. The Artist is one of those films that I feel like that if you have any decency in your heart, you should like it. I mean, it feels like almost a sin not to like this movie, but if you haven't watched it, about this guy by the name of George Valentine. And George Valentine comes from the silent film era, and the talkie film era is coming in, and he loses his job, he loses all his money, and he becomes depressed and considers killing himself. And I'm not going to spoil the ending for you all, but it's definitely a very heartfelt film. It has great directing. I really like the acting of the main character. And the only thing I'll say about it is that it is a black and white film, and it is silent. So if you don't like that kind of stuff, this might not be for you. But honestly, I don't really see what the big deal is. I mean, it really didn't distract me at all from the story. And I think the story is so good that it doesn't really matter that it's silent or black and white. It could be anything, and it would still be a lot of fun to watch. It's a Wonderful Life. A lot of people consider this film to be overrated. As a director, I really don't think it is. I'm really impressed by the transitions. I really love Jimmy Stewart's acting in this film, especially during that insanity scene where his eyes just got so wide and you could really feel the emotion in that scene. You have to admit there are some good things about that movie, even if you don't like everything about it. But anyways, if you haven't watched it, it's about this man by the name of George Bailey. And he basically lives his whole life in Bedford Falls doing everything for everyone else and never going off to do the things he wants to do. And one day he loses all of his money and he considers killing himself. And this angel comes and stops him. And I don't want to spoil the ending, even though I really think you should have watched this film by now. If you haven't, it's free on YouTube, but it's really one of the 3 films you should see in life. I mean, it's like Citizen Kane, It's a Wonderful Life, and Gone with the Wind. Oh, and The Wizard of Oz. 4 films. Okay, 4 films. But definitely, it's a great Christmas movie. It's a great romance movie. It's a great fantasy movie. It's just a great movie all around. Casablanca. If you remember my 5 amazing things about Seth Lewis video, you'll remember that I originally intended Casablanca to be my favorite film. So now I'm putting it down at number 3 because I was thinking about it and finally decided number 3 would be a better place for it. But I actually consider this film to be better than Citizen Kane, which is often regarded as the greatest film, because it just has more character, more emotion, better acting, the directing's great. And don't get me wrong, Citizen Kane is a great film. I just think that Casablanca is way better. And it's a story about this man. He's living in Africa, and he ends up finding this woman who, was the love of his life. And it's just, there's so many good quotes from it. Play it again, Sam. We'll always have Paris. And that ending is so perfect. In fact, it's kind of the ending which convinces me that it's better than Citizen Kane. Because Casablanca managed to hit the ending just right to leave the audience on that perfect note, whereas Citizen Kane kind of left off on a very sort of a confused note, I felt like. Not that Citizen Kane did a horrible job with the ending, just that Casablanca's ending was a little bit better. Again, we're deciding between the greatest films ever made. We've got to take everything into account. But yes, if you have no problem with black and white films, you'll have no problem with this one. Unlike most of the films on this list, I can't come up with anything wrong to say about Modern Times. I remember leaving the movie, just going and like washing my hands. I'm like, wait a minute, that was the greatest film I've ever seen. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it from beginning to end. And I think that's what I really love about it. There's nothing bad to say about it. The characters are perfect, the plot, I mean, nothing drags on. And you can say that about some of the others on this list. Some of them drag on a little bit too much, I'll admit. Casablanca might drag on for some people. It is an older movie, so back then it would have been fine, but nowadays we're more quick-paced. But no, I think that Modern Times works perfectly today. And again, it is a silent movie. It is in black and white, so if you don't like that kind of stuff, maybe you won't be into this movie. But if you haven't heard the story, I didn't go into too much plot for this one because there really isn't too much plot to it. It's basically about the tramp. He lives in a futuristic society and he's trying to find a job. He ends up finding this girl, and it's a romance story in a lot of ways. But I mean, again, there's not much to say. They're just trying to find a job throughout the movie. And really, I can't even spoil the ending because I don't really feel like there was one. But I don't know if this... I think this is one of those movies that I'm like, why isn't this free on the internet? Because it's not, but it should be. Definitely should be free on the internet. Everyone should watch this film. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Maybe one of the reasons I'm putting this at number 1 is childhood nostalgia, but I honestly don't think so. I think it's just because it had such significance to my... it just has such power, this film. I think that's the best way to describe it. You know, it was a film that really showed you what films could do. And yeah, are there flaws with it? Of course, but it's 9 hours, you know, or I know it's 3 different movies, but I like to consider these all to be the same films. And if you're not okay with that, that's fine. You can put Lord of the Rings as Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King is number 3 for me, Casablanca is number 2, and Modern Times is number 1. But for me, The Lord of the Rings should be considered a whole entire film, because I just feel like there's that spirit to it, and that was how the original books were intended to be. But I don't think I need to explain this one too much, because I explained the plot in my top 5 favorite books, and it's the same there. The films actually follow the books very well, much better than I would have ever thought they could do. And really, I think all of you have probably watched these films, but if you haven't, definitely watch them. You will have fun with them, I guarantee you. So those are my favorite films, and you know what? Let's just end off with some more puppies. Why not?